Welcome to class 5 of the 10-week series. We're almost halfway through. I always find that so amazing how quickly it goes. So class 5 is dedicated to the fourth limb of yoga, which is pranayama, which are the breathing practices. And so there will be a lot of attention on the breath in this class today. Woven in with a philosophical theme of the kleshas, and the kleshas are our emotional, affective sort of potential hindrances. That's one way to look at them, but there are 5 of them, and these are affective manifestations or needs or energies that can get in the way of an easeful or peaceful life. They can be seen as causes of suffering in that they distract us from the world as it really is. The kleshas are tied in very much with our energetic body layer. If you remember the 5 layers of self, we talked about them at the very beginning, in that this is where the kleshas begin to arise. If you remember last week, we talked about the gunas, and the gunas arise out of, originally, out of our physical survival. So we talked about the autonomic nervous system and all of that. The kleshas, the more affective manifestations, arise out of relationship in the sense that now we're not just concerned about physical survival, but we're also concerned about our emotional affective survival. It's like we're starting to realize that there are things that feel good, there are things that feel bad, and there are things that feel neutral. And because of that realization, we sort of become a little bit attached to feeling good, because feeling good feels better than feeling bad, or even than feeling neutral. And so those affective energies develop out of that sense of, ooh, I just was fed and that felt really good, or I just was cuddled with and that felt really nice, and so now I want more of that. And so the kleshas come out of that sort of dynamic of starting to be emotional or affective beings that suddenly have this idea of, oh, some things feel better than others. And so we have this sense of, I'd really rather have more of the things that feel good and fewer of the things that feel bad. And there are 5 manifestations of that the yogis talk about. And they, of course, change with age, right? And the more we have a mind that also starts to play along with this, the more complex these attachments or cravings or clingings can be. So the 5 afflictions, as the yogis call them, the first one that I'll talk about is often translated as attachment. It's not my favorite translation, but it's one I use just because almost everyone uses that translation. But I really like to think of it more as clinging or craving. It's a craving for something that we would like to have, but maybe don't have right now, but we sort of have the remembrance of having had it. We have like the taste left in our mouth of some sense pleasure, and so now we're craving for more. Clinging is that we're trying to hang on to something that we already have and that feels really good, and we want to keep it. So they're the same thing. They're both attachment. There's a really subtle difference between clinging and craving, and I don't care if you remember that difference, but I like to point it out just because I love nuances. That's just my own wiring. So that's one of the manifestations of the kleshas. The second one is the flip side of that coin, which is an aversion to something that I have, or an aversion to something that I fear might be coming. So it's that same differentiation. One aversion could be about something that I'm already experiencing. So maybe I have a toothache and I develop an aversion to, oh, geez, why do I have to have a toothache? Or it's something like, I'm going to have an exam tomorrow and I'm just kind of annoyed that now I have to study for that. So that it's the same thing. There's sort of like the future and there's the present, to which we can have an aversion or a not liking, an irritation. The third one that I'll talk about, and I'm taking them in a different order than the Yoga Sutras do, than Patanjali does, is fear. Fear of change, fear of what is happening, or anxiety about something that's already going on. It's very much linked to the gunas, because remember the gunas were all about ensuring our survival, and so it's in a way overcoming the fear of death. But the kleshas, in the kleshas, that fear is really sort of a developmental thing. It isn't just fear about physiological or physical survival, it's also fear about other things. And so this is where our anxiety lives. Fourth is a clinging or a hanging on to self-identities that we have created for ourselves. And so it could be like, well, like in the yoga practice, right? Oh, I'm a really good forward folder. And then maybe I have a day where my hamstrings don't cooperate. And then I get annoyed because I can't live up to this identity that I've created. Or we have an identity around, I'm a yoga teacher, and then if something threatens that identity, I become dysregulated. This klesha kicks up of, oh, why is this aspect of me being threatened? And so there's a hanging on to a way in which we define ourselves, sort of losing track of the fact that that's really just a construct we created. And then at the bottom of all of that is just our basic confusion about what's real and what's important in life. And the yogis call this avidya, which means non-seeing. It's like a lack of wisdom. It's like not really understanding what life is all about, that it really isn't about gaining sense pleasures or about avoiding stuff we don't like or about being scared or about clinging to identity, but that it really is about finding a skillful way of living in the world that minimizes the suffering we experience, that maximizes our contentment, and that allows us to be of service to our greater community. And when we forget that, we tend to get confused. We get confused and distracted by things that are actually less important. So I'm framing all of this sort of from the perspective of these things can be problematic, but they don't have to be. We can have cravings and clingings that are actually good for us, like clinging to the yogic path, for example, until we're enlightened is really important because it keeps us coming to the practice. Having an identity as I'm a yogi and I have a commitment to that practice keeps us coming to the mat. And so these kleshas are also, as the Buddha would have said, they're also our life raft that sort of take us to the other shore of our existence, which is the shore of being enlightened, of seeing, of finding that wisdom. And it's not until we get there that we can let go, even of those clingings, those cravings, those aversions. So I'm mentioning that as an aside, just to be really clear that not all clinging, not all aversion is bad. It's only when we have aversions or clingings or ego identifications that then lead us to unskillful ways of being in the world. And even that's kind of an overstatement. So anyway, we will play with these themes throughout our practice today, which will be a twisting practice, because twists have a tendency to bring all of these things up in our emotional being. And twists also stir up toxins in our physical being. And so you may feel a little irritated during the practice today. That happens with twisting. So let me just warn you about that, because literally twists compress your tissues And any toxins that are in the tissues might then be released. And so you can feel what some people call liverish, where if you're releasing a lot of toxins, your liver might get a little bit overwhelmed. This can happen after a deep tissue massage as well. So if you feel like a little irritable or not, or even a little bit nauseous at the end of this practice, I profoundly apologize, but it's good for you. Just drink a lot of water tonight, and that'll help. All right, so from here, I invite you to find a comfortable seat. You could be slightly reclined like we've done in the past, or you can be seated upright. And make sure that you have a lift under your sits bones if your knees pop up without it. You can see I'm sitting on a blanket. That's just a really nice, auspicious way for me to be seated for a longer period of time. You could also sit in a chair using the backrest or not using the backrest. And so go ahead and get yourself situated, and when you have found your seat, I invite you to find a comfortable hand position. If you're feeling a little more introspective today, you can turn the palms down. If you're looking a little bit more for inspiration, you could turn the palms up. They could be on your thighs, it could be in your lap. And if it feels appropriate for you in this moment, you might choose to close your eyes, or you could bring your eyelids to half mast and find a nice, soft gaze in front of you. I invite you to wiggle and root yourself into place so that you feel the support of the earth beneath you. Maybe growing imaginary roots into the ground. Maybe really feeling your sits bones connecting to the seat underneath you. And if you're seated in a way that also has your legs on the ground, feeling a solidity there of the contact with the earth. And then feel the earth responding, providing you with an upward lift through the spine, as maybe your vertebrae separate even a fraction of a millimeter apart as the crown of your head moves toward your ceiling or toward the sky, creating maybe a sense of space or even spaciousness in your body. Let yourself also experience stability in the body, knowing that your body has resilience to recalibrate itself in this seat. And so I invite you to make sure that your belly is nice and soft, even as you are finding a stable seat here. Not drawing the abdominal muscles in too much, because you want to really work with a very natural breath today, and it needs a soft belly. As the body feels settled, gently bring your attention to the breath and observe it with curiosity. For now, without any desire or expectation to change the breath in any way. Watch how the breath travels into your body and out of your body. Finding perhaps the physical place where you can locate the breath most easily for you. We talked about these options before. It might be in the belly, it might be in the lower rib cage, it might be higher in the chest, the nose, the throat. And invite this very beautiful conversation or dance between the breath and the body to unfold very naturally. There's no need for you to direct this. The body and the breath have their own natural rhythm. You simply observe. You simply notice. You might also notice the texture of your breath, both the inhalation and the exhalation, noting if they're flowing in smoothly, or maybe choppily, or tensely, or harshly. Just notice. Again, without any intention or expectation, or anything in particular to manifest, just with curiosity. And then gently direct your curiosity, especially to the inhalation. Following the inhalation from its beginnings, perhaps even outside of your body, to its end. Really feeling the full arc of air moving into your lungs. Maybe even finding a somewhat of a sense of wonder about how the air travels into your body. How naturally this inhalation unfolds for you. And as you continue to watch the arc of the inhalation, begin to notice what happens at the point when the inhalation is finished. And yet the exhalation has not yet started. And just notice if there is any sense of a moment of stillness or a gap or a resting pause. No expectation, just curiosity about whether there is a moment, a transition point that you can notice at the end of the inhalation and before the beginning of the exhalation. Then widen your attention to also include the exhalation, so that now you're watching the very beginnings of the inhalation, the full arc of the inhalation, maybe that little gap at the top of the breath, and then the out breath. The full arc of releasing air, of letting go. Really noticing the exhalation now for a while, and that sense of letting air move out of your body, a sense of releasing. Of letting go. Letting go maybe not just of the breath, but letting go of expectations, letting go of outcomes. And then when you reach the end of the arc of the exhalation, when the exhalation is finished, notice if there is a little gap at the bottom of the exhalation, at the bottom of the breath before the inhalation moves in. Do you notice a little point of stillness in that transition? Maybe a moment of peace, a moment of tranquility, a moment of not grasping for the next breath in. And then as you continue to breathe, see if you can invite a lengthening in that tiny gap at the bottom of the breath. Can you deliberately hold out the breath before you once again inhale? Not holding out the breath so long that you're then gasping for air, but just long enough to really feel that sense of release. That sense of having let go of everything and not yet needing anything. Take a few rounds of breath in this way, inhaling, exhaling, retaining the breath for an auspicious amount of time that only you can determine. And then restarting the cycle. Notice if there's a part of you that's clinging to the idea of a really long retention, trying to make it longer than it needs to be, or if there's a part of you that wants to reject that idea of holding out the breath. Just noticing those emotional or energetic reactions to breathing in this way. Maybe there's even a little fear of what might happen. Simply sit with all of that. Inhale again. Exhale and let go. And then notice what happens in the gap. Take 2 to 4 more rounds of breath like this. And then gently return to your natural breath cycle. Once again, curious about how the breath moves in and out. Curious if anything changed in the breath. Noticing if there is a desire to see a change or worry about not seeing a change, and just letting go of that. Coming back simply to breathing in and out naturally, contentedly, peacefully. And then with the hand position of your choice, bow your head to heart center and tune inward. Connecting for a moment to that experience of having worked with the breath so deliberately. And from that place, invite an intention for your time on the mat today. an intention emerge for you that seems worthy of dedicating yourself to, you might seal it into your heart with an inhale, and you might send it into your world with an exhale. And then release your hands, open your eyes if they were closed, and lift your focus. And then go ahead and remove any props you had under your seat. We will work a little bit in tabletop. If you have sensitive knees, you could spread a blanket under your knees. That might be an auspicious way of working in tabletop. Your hands can come to rest directly under the shoulders if your wrists are happy there, or they can be a little bit ahead of your shoulders if you know that you have sensitive wrists, and you could be on your forearms if being on your wrists isn't appropriate for you at all. All of those positions will work just fine. And then wherever you are, find a gentle cow and cat movement. So as you inhale, let the belly be heavy, move toward the earth, maybe the head rises. There's not a lot of effortful movement in the head, it's more of a rhythm. And then as you exhale, draw the belly in, come into a cat arch, and see if it feels appropriate for you to take a gap here at the bottom of the breath. So holding cat for a moment, creating that same retention that we created in our deliberate breathing practice. And then inhale when you need to inhale. Lifting into cow. And then lifting into cat. With the exhale, holding if you would like. Flowing 2 or 3 more times with your own breath cycle through cow and cat. Noticing maybe your energy as you move through this flow. Is there attachment, clinging to something that you like, or a sense of aversion to something that you don't? Or any other preoccupation. The next time you have come to your cat position, let that be the last part of this movement, and then return to neutral with an inhalation. And from here, with your next inhalation, lift your right arm, and then yogi's choice, you can also lift your left leg. Then as you exhale, release those limbs. And with an inhale, switch sides. Exhale and lower, and maybe hold for a moment before you switch sides, creating that gap. Yet again, flowing with your own breath, alternating here. Creating stability, creating balance. As you flow. And again, remembering that you can do this movement in other ways too. So you could be on your elbows and find the same beauty here in this flow. The next time you have lifted your left arm and your right leg, when you return back down, go ahead and come to neutral in tabletop. And then with an inhalation, once again, right arm, left leg, but just for a moment. And then as you exhale, draw the right elbow to the left knee underneath you. Scrunching yourself up and holding out the breath here for a moment, if that feels appropriate. And just notice, what energy does this create in your body? And then expand expand back out with the inhale, and with the next exhale, release down, and then hold for a moment, and then switch sides. Inhaling, left leg, left arm, right leg. And then when you exhale, touching the left elbow to the right knee, holding, finding that gap at the bottom of the breath. And then inhaling and exhaling the limbs down. Taking your time to do this one more time on each side. Inhaling, right arm, left leg. Exhaling, touching knee to elbow and holding. Inhaling when your breath needs to travel in. Exhale, lower and hold. When the inhalation wants to travel in, switch sides. Left arm, right leg. Exhale, touch knee to elbow and hold. Notice what comes up for you. Inhale when you are ready, and then exhale and find your neutral tabletop. From here, move your left hand toward the center of the short end of your mat. And we will take a very slight rotation here. So now as you inhale, you will lift your right arm up. As you exhale, you will thread it through the opening between the left arm and left leg, not bringing the arm to the floor, but reaching through, and then hold again at the bottom of the breath for a gap. When you need to inhale, inhale, bring that right arm up. We'll do this 3 to 5 times depending on your breath cycle here. Exhaling to reach through, holding and noticing what emerges for you as you're holding here. Is this pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral for you? Is there a desire to get away from it? Is there a desire for more? Just notice. Let your next round be your last one. So one more time of inhaling your right arm up and exhaling it through, holding and noticing what arises. And then with an inhalation, once again, finding your neutral place in tabletop. Moving now the right hand or the right forearm toward the center of the short end of the mat. And with your inhalation, lifting the left arm up. With the exhalation, sliding it through, not touching down, and holding out the breath, holding on to the twist until your inhalation wants to flow in to bring you back up, lifting the left arm. 3 to 5 movements here with your own breath cycle. Noticing what arises for you at the bottom of the breath here as you're moving into this twist. Noticing if you're craving a long pause, or if you're completely averse to even holding the twist. And let your next round be your last one. So one last lift of the left arm, one last threading through. And with your next inhalation, find your neutral position. From here, we will come to standing. And now you might need to have your blocks handy. They might serve you quite well for our next round of movements. Start with 2 blocks at the top of your mat. And find yourself in mountain pose. Grounding through the feet in the same way that you grounded through your seat earlier. And then feeling that same rebound from the earth, creating spaciousness and space in your body and maybe in your energy, right? From here, we will inhale to lift the arms up and overhead, and exhale, bring the hands into the hip creases to give yourself a prompt for a nice forward fold. The hands come to the blocks. Feel your back body in this forward fold, all the way from your fascia at the bottom of your foot, across the heel, all the way up the leg, and across the back, all the way into the neck. Just notice what's present for you in terms of sensation here. And then notice if aversion arises, if there's tightness, or if there's a craving for a bigger fold. Or maybe there's like identity tied up in being somebody who can reach the floor here with your hands. Just notice what comes up for you as you are in this forward fold. From here, take one of your blocks, bring it between your shins, and hug it with your legs so that you really feel an engagement in the legs. And then bend the knees a lot. From here, sort of like almost a skier position, bring the arms parallel to the floor so they're in line with your body. And then use the power of your belly to lift yourself up into chair pose. And notice what comes up for you in this flow. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you fear it? Do you want it? Just notice. Notice your breath. Notice if it has changed in texture, maybe even in location. With your next exhalation, descend back toward the floor, touching the torso to the thighs first. Coming out of this the same way we came in, straightening the legs. We'll do this one more time. I'm gonna flip myself around. You don't have to do that. So once again, bend the knees a lot. The torso is resting on your thighs, if at all possible. You can always have a chair that you're hanging onto with your arms to create stability. You could even touch your bum to a yoga ball or a chair if this is too much. Then bring the arms out in front of you and use the core to lift yourself up. Bring your palms together and reach them across to the outside of your right leg, wherever they can touch. Maybe they don't touch at all. Maybe you're doing this. It doesn't really matter how far you twist here. Just feel that rotation in the spine. And notice what unfolds for you here. As you're twisting yourself into this revolved chair pose. What is coming up for you? Is there aversion? Is there wanting? And can you breathe into it? With your next inhalation, release yourself forward again. You can have your other block to rest for a moment, or you can rest your hands on a chair or a yoga ball. And of course, you realize we have to do the other side, right? So we're going to bend the knees yet again. And remember, you can sit on a chair literally here. Lift the arms parallel to the floor. And then use your belly and your glutes and your quads, whatever you can recruit here, to lift into chair pose. Then touch the palms together and twist to the left. Again, you might be here. You might be here. Find what variation is auspicious for you. And then notice what shows up. Are you craving for more? Are you irritated? Are you worried? What's showing up? And you release it with the out breath. And then very literally, release and come back to your forward fold. You can release the breath from between the shins and be in a half lift. If that feels like a resting pose for you, you can stay here. Or if you would like, with an inhalation, you can rise all the way up. Bring the hands to the heart and rest in mountain pose for a moment. Yogi's choice. Notice if there's a clinging here to picking one offered variation over another. Maybe a little ego. And then if you rose up into mountain pose, release your palms. Inhale the arms up. Exhale and dive forward. You can use the fingers in the hip creases to prompt yourself into a forward fold. And then from here, take your left hand and bring it to the outside of the right leg, wherever it is auspicious for you, to yet again come into a little twist. If you want the block under the right hand to be at full height, you can leave it there. If it feels more auspicious for you to lower it, you can lower it. There's no need for a huge twist here. You just want enough rotation to feel the reverberation of this twisting in your energy, in your emotions. What is coming up for you? Which kleshas is this drawing out? Most of us have one favored automatic emotional response. And so just notice what's yours, what comes up most easily. Wanting and clinging, or aversion, or fear, or confusion. Be with whatever arises. And then invite a release with the exhale. With your next inhalation, come back to your half lift. And then the next time you exhale, switch sides. Right hand to the outside of the left leg now. Again, wherever it reaches, your decision about where the left hand lands. And find a rotation to the other side. Yet again, noticing what shows up for you here.
Maybe some part of you is griping or complaining about this. Maybe some part of you is really enjoying it or confused. Just notice which klesha shows up for you, which emotional or energetic response makes itself felt. And then with your next inhalation, rise back to your half lift. Take a moment here. And then if your blocks aren't at the top of the mat, go ahead and move them there and come into a lunge position. So step the right foot to the inside of the right block and the left foot behind you. Find yourself in this lunge. Oops, I need to turn. You can see me. And then unweight the right hand. The left hand will still be somewhat weight-bearing, but really the stability of the pose is coming from the legs drawing toward each other. And then open yourself up into a twist in the lunge. Notice what emerges for you here as you are rotating in the spine, squeezing out your tissues. And as you squeeze out your tissues, what are your issues? What's coming up for you? Can you breathe through it? With your next out breath, return to your lunge. Take a resting breath or two. And then step the right foot back to meet the left, or you can step the left foot forward to meet the right, whichever is more auspicious for you. Just switch sides. So that now the left foot is on the inside of the left brick. And then unweight the left hand, creating again stability enough that you could theoretically lift both hands. And of course you can be on your elbow here. There's nothing magical about being on the hand. And then from here, open yourself up. Finding yet another spinal rotation. Finding a beautiful twist. The back knee can be lowered. And notice what arises. What is your default klesha? Where do you run? Do you run to aversion? Do you run to fear, to confusion, to clinging, to craving? Just notice. And then with your next exhalation, lower yourself back down. Lower the back knee. Add the forward knee to the back knee. Remove your blocks and take a moment in either child's pose or puppy pose to recalibrate your nervous system, to find your breath, to maybe return to the same breathing practice we started with. Finding your inhalation, your exhalation, and maybe even finding a gap at the bottom of the breath. Choose the timing of your breath according to what you sense, what you intuit is most auspicious for you right now. To release and relax some of the energy that we stirred up. We are intentionally stirring up affect. We're intentionally awakening your kleshas.
Be fully cognizant of how your nervous system is re-regulating itself as you are taking a moment here to breathe. And notice what is happening with any of the emotions that may have arisen for you. If there was craving, is it dissipating? If there was aversion, is it receding? If there was confusion, can you come back to a sense of clarity? If there was worry or fear, can you find a sense of calm? And remember your options. You can be in puppy or in child's pose. Finding the position that is auspicious for you to reset, to recalibrate. Take 2 more rounds of breath. Maybe finding that gap at the bottom of the breath. And if you're in child's pose, gently draw your hands underneath the shoulders to press yourself back up, to come into tabletop. From tabletop or from puppy's pose, if you're on your forearms. If you're on your forearms, you can stay there and come into downward dog on your forearms, which really is kind of like dolphin pose. If you're in tabletop, walk your hands about a hand's length distance forward so that they're ahead of your shoulders, and curl your toes under. If you're on your forearms, the same thing, curl the toes under. And then, without even thinking about where you're headed, draw the hips toward the heels and press either into the forearms or the hands, depending on where you are. And let that movement of pressing into the earth lift the hips up and move the legs toward straight. They don't have to be straight. To come into a down dog or a dolphin pose if you're on your forearms. And then yet again, check in with your back body in the same way that we did at the beginning in our forward fold. Feel the back body from the plantar fascia across the heel, up the back of the lower legs, the hamstrings, the glutes, the low back, the back of the chest, all the way through the neck to the head. You can also choose a variation here that has you on your knees and forearms. It's always the most auspicious thing to choose what is wise for your body. Then from here, walk your right hand to the center of the mat. You might want to widen your feet a little bit wider apart to have more stability as you unweight the left hand. And then reach the left hand through the opening to come to the outside of the right leg. Wherever it touches down is fine. It might come to the outside of the shin. It might come up to the outside of the knee or the thigh. Doesn't matter. You could even rest it on the floor over to the right so that you're creating a twist in your downward dog, your dolphin, or your puppy pose. Wherever you are, create a beautiful twist and notice what arises for you. Which klesha might rear its head?
Take a breath, and you can always come to child's pose if you need to take a break. With your next inhalation, release the left hand back to the earth and rest for a few breaths, either in down dog or in puppy's pose. Your choice. Notice if when I give you choices, your choices are made with discernment, or if your choices are based on your kleshas. If aversion takes you to the floor, if craving keeps you in whatever you think of as the harder pose, if ego maybe propels you into something that's actually not the best thing for you physically. And just notice those propensities. Once you've rested enough, find your position again, whether it's down dog or dolphin or puppy. Walk the left hand toward the center of the mat, unweight the right hand, and twist to the other side. Wherever the right hand lands on the outside of the left knee. Find your twist and notice what emerges for you. What is showing up? Fear, confusion, craving, clinging, aversion, annoyance, irritation, griping, complaining. With your next inhalation, release the right hand down, release the knees down. Sit on your heels. Take a moment of rest. If you're not a happy heel sitter, you can swing the hips to one side and go ahead and swing the legs forward. That's where we're headed next anyway. So either way, rest either sitting on your heels or rest in staff pose. If you've already come into staff pose, you might want to bring a blanket under the sits bones to create a kinder alignment in your spine. And then if you're still sitting on your heels, go ahead and join us in staff pose. And then with your next exhalation, bring your hands under the right thigh and draw the right knee to your chest and just give it a little squeeze. Breathe here and just notice what it feels like to compress the left side of your abdomen by hugging the knee into your chest. The next time you exhale, let that go. Inhale here, and then exhale and switch sides. Hugging the left knee in. Hanging on, and just noticing. Just still taking a little bit of a rest here before we move into the next round of twisting. With your next exhalation, release. Find yourself in staff pose yet again. I'm going to flip myself around again. With your next exhalation, clasp the left thigh with your hands, bend the knee, bring the leg up, And this time, hook your left elbow around the left knee, or you could bring the hand to the left hand to the left knee, whatever reaches. Dorsiflex your ankle, so drawing the toes toward the knees, toward the hips. And then wherever you are hanging on to your left knee, from there, take the right hand and bring it out behind you. If it's hovering above the floor, take a block so that you have something that you can rest that hand on. If the floor is close enough, you can use the floor. But if it's too far away, then use a block. It's a light touch. You're not putting any weight into that. So you could literally just touch the fingertips to the floor. And then see if, as you inhale, you can find some lengthening upward in the spine, drawing the crown of the head toward the ceiling. And then as you exhale, see if there is more turn that can happen here. You can absolutely let that left hip come forward. That is the natural way to twist. There's nothing magical about holding the pelvis in place here, even though you often hear it taught that way. Let the left hip come forward and feel the twist. Feel whatever energy it stimulates. Notice if you're adverse to moving more deeply into the twist, or if you're really trying to power into the twist. Notice your own propensity. With your next inhalation, bring yourself forward and once again hug your left knee. Now from here, keep the right arm hugging the left knee. Again, it's up to you what hugs the left knee. Maybe it's your elbow, maybe it's your hand. Doesn't matter. It's whatever is auspicious for your body. You might need to lean back a little bit to move some belly flesh out of the way. Whatever works. And then we take a twist to the other side. I'm not going to switch, so you're not going to see my front. You're going to see my back. So you're coming now into a closed twist. Now the left hand is behind you. Maybe it comes to a block. Maybe you're on your fingertips. It's not weight bearing. It's just there as a little prop to remind you to keep your spine upright. Let the right hip now travel into the turn. Or maybe a little bit more rotation. Maybe the head looks over the left shoulder. Maybe it looks straight out, or maybe it looks over the other shoulder. It's really up to you. And then notice what emerges for you. With your next inhalation, unravel the twist. Give yourself a gentle hug. Nice breath here. And then release the left leg down. Reassemble your seat. Wiggle yourself into your staff pose. Come to your breath. Maybe finding the gap at the bottom of the breath. And then with your next exhalation, clasp the right thigh with your hands and bring that right leg up. Hugging the knee to begin with both arms. And we'll again turn to the left here, starting with an open twist again. So you decide, are you holding on to the right knee with your right hand or with your right elbow? Then let the left arm travel around and back. Let the right hip travel forward to come into this turn. Notice what emerges for you emotionally, energetically. Meet whatever shows up. Breathe through it. Notice if you're stopping short of the twist out of aversion, or notice if you're moving too far into the twist out of habitual craving. And then make a conscious decision about what it is that you want to do. Or maybe you're confused. Just notice. And then with your next exhalation, bring that left arm forward, give another hug. And then either the left hand or the left elbow hugs the right thigh. Release yourself back a little bit and move any belly flesh. Let the right hand come behind you, maybe on a block, maybe on the floor, no weight bearing, maybe on the fingertips. Let the left hip pivot forward to turn into the twist now. Closed twist to the right. Your head position again is up to you, either looking over the right shoulder, looking straight ahead, or looking over the left shoulder. What shows up? Don't argue with any kleshas that arise, just notice them. It's an exercise in noticing our habits, our affective habits, our energetic habits. We're creating challenge in our physical tissues here to gain greater insights into our energetic patterns. So just sit with it. Breathe into it. With your next exhalation, swing that right arm forward. Give that right knee a nice hug. Then go ahead and invite the left knee to the party and give yourself a full squeeze. You could even rest your forehead on your knees, if that works for you, or any part of you, maybe your chin, or you can sit upright. Really feel the contact between the thighs and your abdomen. And then, with an exhalation, release the right leg down, squeezing just the left leg now.
Feeling maybe your energy calming, nervous system resetting. And then with an exhale, release the left leg. Remove the prop from underneath your sits bones. You might want to keep it at the top of your mat, ready ultimately for your resting position, just so it's handy. Scoot yourself forward on your mat. And then find your way to a supine position. You can walk the hands down behind you, or you can bring the elbows down to bring yourself down, or you can stretch the arms forward, roll down one vertebra at a time, yogi's choice. And even in making that choice, notice whether the kleshas are creeping in to determine that choice, or whether you're really listening to your intuition to know what's best for you. Once you're on your back, go ahead and bring the knees into the chest, walk the hips away from the shoulders to create a little bit of space in the spine. Even if it's just you're in our imagination, right? And then from here, the arms come out in a T position or a cactus position. Your own shoulders can help you make the decision of what's more auspicious for you here. You might want a block handy. I should have cued that a little bit sooner, because we're going to twist here in a supine position, and the floor might be too far away, and a block can bring the floor a little bit closer if that's the case. From here, with an exhalation, you will bring both knees over to the right, maybe to a block, maybe to the floor. The left hip will come up off the floor, but see if the left shoulder can stay grounded. That might mean keeping a block under the legs so that that left shoulder can stay where it is. If it feels appropriate to you, you could choose to close your eyes here. Take a few rounds of breath. Watching your nervous system. And maybe noticing if your emotional energies are still present, or if the kleshas are calming down as we're on our back now with less demand. With your next exhalation, bring your knees to center. Recalibrate your spine. Maybe you need to lift the hips, walk them away a little bit, get everything in alignment again. Maybe have your block handy, and then bring both knees to the left. The right hip will really come up off the ground. Let's see if the right shoulder can stay grounded. And if it can't, maybe use a block so that the twist is not so extreme here. Come back to your breath. Observing the inhalation and exhalation. Perhaps even inviting that gap at the bottom of the breath. With your next exhalation, bring the knees
back to center. And again, rearrange yourself to straighten out. And then invite any last little movements that seem appropriate to your body. Maybe hugging the knees in, rocking side to side. Maybe some circles. Maybe a bridge pose or a happy baby pose. Check in with yourself. What feels good for your body? Maybe a random movements, right? Just the equivalent of little wiggles and shakes that we do when we're standing. And then in your own due time, gently begin to settle yourself into your final resting position. Today, I really encourage you to have some kind of lift under the knees. You could take a jacket or a sweater and stick it under the knees, or use your blanket and have your sweater under your head, or have a little pillow. Just something to bring a little bit of a bend into the knees, to take any pressure off the low back. Or you could have your knees bent and touching each other with the feet mat width apart. And then settle yourself into corpse pose. Relaxation pose. Invite the body to ground and settle, knowing that you can always wiggle and move to create a sense of ease in the body. And then similarly, invite the breath to become gentle and soft, to flow very naturally. Allowing yourself to be breathed. Find a softness in your body, a softness in your breath, a softness in your mind. And from that place of gentle peacefulness, imagine yourself calling yourself by your name. And what comes up for you? Who are you in that moment as you are calling, saying your name? Who are you? And then imagine a maternal figure in your life. It doesn't have to be a biological mother, just a maternal figure in your life. Looking at you, saying your name. And as you hear this motherly figure saying your name, who are you in that moment? Let this be an intuitive response. Don't overthink it. And then imagine a paternal figure, a father figure. Again, doesn't have to be biological.
A paternal figure in your life looking at you, calling you by your name, saying your name. Who are you in that moment? And then imagine a sibling or a friend who is like a sibling to you, looking at you, calling your name, saying your name. As they say your name, who are you in that moment? And then imagine a beloved teacher looking at you, calling your name, saying your name. As that teacher says your name, who are you in that moment? And then imagine a close friend looking at you, saying your name, calling your name. And as this dear friend is saying your name, who are you in that moment? And then imagine a lover, a loved one, saying your name, calling your name. And as this lover is saying your name, who are you in that moment? And then imagine a stranger you have just met saying your name. And as this stranger says your name, who are you in that moment? And then once again, imagine yourself looking at you, calling your name, saying your name. And as you say your name to yourself, who are you in that moment? It's quite likely that many selves emerged, many roles, many identities. Maybe some aversions, maybe some cravings, even clinging, maybe some confusion or misperceptions, maybe even some fears. You are all of those roles. You are all of those cravings. You are all of those aversions and confusions and fears. And you are none of them. Underneath those many, many instructions and emotions, there's a true you, an essence that is peaceful, joyful, endless. There's a true you that is both loved and loving. There's a you in there that is resilient and adaptable. And there is a you in there that is completely indefinable. From here, I invite you into a few moments of silence. Gently begin to awaken your senses. Perhaps once again noticing sounds around you. Perhaps making note of the air and the clothing on your skin. Maybe there's an aroma or a gentle scent in your room. You could even blink your eyes open for a moment to take in what's there to see around you. And then taking all the time you need in the next 20 seconds or so, gently make a transition to a seat. Rolling to your right side, maybe resting there for a while. And then rising to a seat when you feel ready. Once you have found a seat, choose your hand position, maybe on your thighs or in your lap, at your heart, or maybe palms together. And once again, bow your head to your heart. You've looked deeply into your kleshas today, into your emotional predispositions. You've danced with aversion, you've danced with craving, with confusion, with fear, with ego. You've become more aware of what might arise for you energetically, habitually. Creating this kind of insight into our emotional and energetic presence is a great way to move toward a life that's freer of suffering. As always, thank you so much for sharing this practice with me. It's an honor, a privilege, and a joy. Thank you.